Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Debbie Keener and I am the head of marketing and special projects here at the Oceanside Library. I would like to introduce my colleague and fellow presenter, head of adult services, Nadine Spano. We are known around here as Deb and Nay, and we encourage you to go to pagingoceanside.com to learn about our series of online book discussions on the same page with Deb and Nay, and our podcast, Books and Banter. And we're very lucky that we also bring you author spotlight series every month. And that's very exciting. So we're happy about that. And lastly, Nadine and I would like to thank everyone at the Oceanside Library for giving us this opportunity to bring these programs to the community. So Nadine.
So tonight I'm so excited. We are welcoming Tracy Walder with us. Tracy is the author of The Unexpected Spy, which was our book pick for this month. We had our online book discussion last week. Tracy is a former CIA officer and FBI special agent. She worked as staff operations officer at the CIA Counterterrorism Center for Weapons of Mass Destruction Group. During her time at the CIA, Tracy traveled to Afghanistan, Jordan, Uzbekistan, Algeria, Morocco, Denmark, Sweden, Italy, England, and I'm sure there's more. During this time, Tracy received many awards for her service from both the CIA and from foreign intelligence offices as well. Among her awards were 4 exceptional performance awards from the director of the CIA, 2 special activity awards, a Meritorious Unit Citation Award, a DCI Counterterrorism Center Medal, and 2 Operation Enduring Freedom Targeting Awards. After the CIA, Tracy became a special agent at the FBI's Los Angeles field office. She specialized in Chinese counterintelligence operations. Tracy has done TED Talks and is sought after public speaker through the World Affairs Council. And we are so excited and honored to have you with us. As we said, that we interview authors as frequently as we can, and you definitely, your book and your story is just so great to have you here after reading about your experiences. So if you can, Tracy, maybe for those who haven't had a chance to read your book yet, tell us a little bit about just your childhood and where you grew up, where you're from, and some of your experiences in your early years.
Sure. Hi, and you guys are just the nicest. And I want to apologize for being a little bit late. We have icy roads here, and someone tapped my bumper. So I want to apologize. I'm originally from Southern California. I was born in the LA area, and then when I was about 7 or 8, we moved to Orange County, California, which is about an hour south. I grew up as I'm in LA. I was born in a very Jewish community. I'm Jewish, and it was, predominantly Jewish community that I was born into in LA. And then when I moved to Orange County, it was a little bit different. And, my temple had security guards and metal detectors. And I kind of began to, I guess, think and realize that we were maybe a little bit different than some other faiths. And I think that's when I started not questioning my faith, but questioning, I guess, why, where did sort of this come from and why? When I was in about 3rd grade or so, I started being very severely bullied, which was a huge bummer. I was born with a developmental disability that causes me to be very clumsy. And so people made fun of me, as kids do, but I feel very lucky to be in my mid-40s because I grew up in a time where, we didn't have the internet and cell phones. And so I could go home and kind of get away from the bullies, if you will, which I actually think was a good thing. But it obviously kind of caused me to be very shy and, not have a ton of friends. And my dad is a huge history buff and would give me lots of books about history to read. And I really started loving it, quite frankly. And I really had an influential teacher my junior year of high school. And it was really then that I decided, well, this guy has really helped me kind of come out of my shell and gain my confidence. I really like history, so maybe I'll be a high school history teacher. And so I applied to 2 colleges, the colleges my dad was a professor at, because I got free tuition. Yeah, I had Chapman University and USC, and I picked USC because Chapman was just really small. And when you're 17, everyone knows your dad, and I just wanted to kind of be a little bit more anonymous. So that's why I picked USC, but it's where my dad was a professor. So I went for free, which was awesome.
That's great.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I don't know if I would want to go to school where, not that my father's a teacher, but I don't think I would want to do that.
I think most people wouldn't. That makes sense. Yeah.
Well, my next question was what sparked your interest in history? So that's funny because you just said that.
Yeah.
You know, it's so nice to hear stories of people, you know, who remember these influential teachers, especially you mentioned being bullied. And I'm sure that this teacher giving you an interest in something must have really just been amazing. And look at what that, you know, has done, right? To put that spark. That's just awesome.
I wrote well, I guess I'm fast forwarding to the end of the book, but I am a teacher now. And my very first job teaching was actually in his classroom with him as my master teacher supervisor. But then once I moved to Texas, he and I sort of like lost contact, not in a bad way. I mean, I moved, and he was an older guy and didn't really use like internet and cell phone a whole lot. And I recently, our local newspaper in the town that I'm from asked if people had any influential teachers and like to submit stories. And so I wrote one actually about him. Aww. And they picked mine and ran it like on the cover. But I found out his wife contacted me, and he unfortunately has Alzheimer's now. Yeah, so he didn't necessarily know about, but I'm just glad that I was able to
share it.
Yeah.
Yes. And I'm sure his wife was so happy to hear that.
Oh yeah, she was. She sent it to her kids and her grandkids, and you know, it was great.
Oh, that's wonderful.
You know, you mentioned you enrolled in the University of Southern California. So then, you know, your book starts with this story about how you kind of happen upon a campus career fair, I guess it was. We've all sort of have memories of that. And, you know, you're on your bike in the sun, and it's this great, it reminds me a little bit of, I said kind of Legally Blonde, like how she starts off and she's, you know, and you happen upon this fair, and there's a table there, the CIA is there, and you hand over your resume, and you really don't share that with anyone. If I remember correctly, you didn't tell your suite mates and your sorority. No. And I thought to myself, well, that was your first covert mission because you were good at keeping it a secret. But why do you think you did why didn't you, you know, some of us would be like, hey, I just applied to the CIA.
You know, it's so funny because I'd like to think at like 44 years old that, you know, the bullying doesn't matter anymore. But I think when you're bullied for like almost 10 years straight, and we're talking so severe, we're talking hitting, punching, stabbing, defacing my car. Like I didn't go into that in my book, like in huge detail, but it was over the top, like bad. And I think you become very into like, you just kind of go in. And so you don't make yourself vulnerable, good or bad, anyone. And so and I still to this day am that way. But I think, you know, with my sorority sisters, it wasn't that I didn't like them. Of course I did, but I didn't tell anyone. I didn't even tell them. I think I mentioned briefly in my book that I did an internship in the Senate. I didn't even mention that to anyone. I just got so programmed to like not, because of the bullying. I know that sounds strange, but
no, not at all.
Actually, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It's just how it kind of went. And I guess I like doing this is fun because fun fact that's not in my book. My sorority house was used to film Legally Blonde when I was living in it. So
Really? Oh, how
yeah, we all had to vacate the house for 2 weeks for them to do the inside.
Oh, wow.
That is so funny.
Yeah.
That's the
You did.
college place that I had in my head.
Yeah.
That you know,
Well,
you were
that
there
whole
and
movie is Harvard is actually USC.
See?
That whole movie was filmed on USC's campus. So it's like
Oh,
her outside of her dorm is our auditorium. Like all of that is actually USC. USC looks very East Coast, I guess, with the brick. But yeah, it was. And I think also too, and I don't mean to get off topic, but I guess to sort of orient the audience if they haven't read the book. I grew up in the 70s, 80s, 90s. A lot of people always ask me, did you always know you wanted to do this? And the very short answer is, why would I have known? Because we have to remember, I don't know how old everyone is, but in my day, first of all, international terrorism didn't exist. Al-Qaeda wasn't formed really until 89, 90. They didn't even start committing attacks until 95. So there wasn't this apparatus that worked international terrorism. And so I think we have to remember that. And then we also have to remember terrorism, at least for me, was Waco, Ruby Ridge, Oklahoma City. Those are the events I grew up with. And, I think today kids have Homeland and Criminal Minds, all those shows in pop culture that expose them to see, no, are they real? No, but at least they know that that's an agency that they can work for or with. For me, and no offense, but I was 17, 18, and James Bond was still Sean Connery, who was 72. Right at the time. And so that's not at a level that I identified with. Right. Mm-hmm. And I think so we have to kind of remember that there was no reason that I would think that would be a place that I could work counterterrorism at, because it just wasn't the time.
It wasn't really a thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
right. That makes sense.
It's such a good point.
We're about the same age. So I have to say, for us, terrorism was Die Hard. That was
yes,
really
exactly.
It was
absolutely.
So, right.
That was Die Hard. That's exactly. And why would that appeal to us? And we really, by the time, bin Laden was doing things, it was in Tanzania or Kenya, and it was 96. I was already in college, I think, by that point. It didn't shape my growing up terrorism. And it's hard. I always have to orient audiences now, because now we can't imagine a world without it. Right. And we have to go back to that mindset. And that's really hard sometimes.
Yeah. I actually, that makes a whole.
I didn't even think of that. I feel like it's been in our lives for so long that it had to have been there when we were children.
Right.
And you're absolutely right. We didn't have that thought in high school, really.
No. I mean, I think maybe in the early 80s, there was the whole
Iran-Contra.
Yeah, right. There was that. But again, you said in the book, before, I think it was before you gave in your resume, that you would stay up at night, thinking about what's happening in the world, and you wouldn't be able to sleep because you would think about all the different things that could happen.
Yeah, I think that's always been maybe my nature. My mom was a huge travel buff, even though we didn't travel overseas a lot. We didn't have that kind of money. She still always exposed us to the world and to different cultures. That was really important to her. And so I think seeing bin Laden, I talk about, his 1997 interview. That's what really was my first time meeting him, right? And when you're a self-centered college student, he says in his interview that's when he issued his fatwa, or his declaration of war against Americans. But to take it one step farther, he said he wanted to kill Jews. And so I'm that's me, right? When you're young, you think everything's about you. And so I think that sort of made me, think more about that. But even when I gave, the gentleman at the table my resume, I said to him, do you guys work counterterrorism? they didn't have a counterterrorism center really at that time. And he said, no, our hiring focus, and to what you were saying before, he said, our hiring focus right now is really Latin America because of a lot of the instability that was going on there, and Russia. And he said, so we're really looking for Spanish speakers and Russian speakers, which and so, I gave him my resume fully expecting to do something that had to do with Latin America and Russia. And I thought, I'll get in, it'll be fine. And then maybe at some point I'll get, they'll move us around to different offices and I'll go to the counterterrorism center. But it's funny that you mentioned that, because that was what they were hiring for at the time.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So when you decided to write down your story after your experience, and you want everybody to see it, how did you go about knowing what were you putting in the book, what was classified? Because when you're reading the book, there are the black sections.
Yeah.
So here you are, you're being vulnerable in this book, and you're putting yourself out there, but there's a lot you can't say.
Yeah.
Sometimes
How do you go about that?
Right. And as a reader, you're like, wait,
I'm trying to turn it.
Totally get it. I know. And then, just for the
see from the other side.
For the audience, here's just an example of, ignore my dual color nail polish. My 6-year-old gave me a manicure.
Beautiful.
I didn't know what I could and couldn't say. So obviously when you leave the CIA and FBI, you sign an NDA, which is fine.
Yeah.
In my book, I have nothing but respect. So I would never want to do anything that I'm not supposed to do. So what I did do is I kind of prepared myself, and I'm sorry if this is boring, but I sort of prepared myself in several different ways. I had been reading news stories from 2016 and 17-ish about these two women who were having tremendous amount of difficulty. Actually, you know what? I apologize. What happened to them would have happened in 2013, 14-ish, and continued all the way up to 16. And they had tried to publish their books, went through what's called the Publication Review Board, which is where you submit your manuscript to. And what they got back was a letter that was a denial in full, which means you cannot publish your book. And they sued and ended up 2.5 years later winning. But it took them 2.5 years. Wow. And so I was like, oh gosh, I reached out to both of them. And since then, they've actually become my really dear friends. We talk all the time, which is really great. Right. But I credit them with paving the way for me, because basically, because their lawsuits were so costly to the agency had to kind of revamp, right, how they were doing things. And when you submit, what I did is I read every book really that had been released that I knew for sure had gone through their review process. And anytime I saw something that might not, I footnoted it to that book. So basically I'm saying to the agency, if you're not letting me talk about this, why did you let John Smith talk about it, but not me? Because that opens the door then to a discrimination lawsuit. And so they have to, I know I sound very litigious, I'm not, but it was just my way of really covering all my tracks. And so I sent it to them, they sent it back. And it was one of those, I'm probably dating myself, but when you get, back in my day, when you got letters back from college, it was like, is it a thick envelope or is it thin? So, right. And so I got it back and it was a thick envelope. And I was like, oh yes, because it wasn't that denial letter, right? Like it was the book back. But unfortunately, those black lines, 8 chapters had them fully, like the whole chapters. And obviously I can't publish a book like that. And so I called the phone number and they're like, we can't tell you why, you're just going to have to keep resubmitting and rewriting and redoing. So I actually appealed through their appeal courts process 2 chapters, Crash and Bang and Poison School, because Crash and Bang, there are 2 other books out there that talk about Crash and Bang. And I was like, hello, they appealed those. I won those right away because I really made the case about, the other things. What you finally read is 5 full rewrites of my book. I know Yeah, I never read Amazon reviews, but I read them and somebody said I was lazy. And I was like, you don't even know. They're like, and finally on the fifth time, my editor was like, this is fine. Let's publish it like this. So that was her decision.
Oh, okay. You know, it's interesting because when this is the first time we've spoken to someone who's had to go through, it's hard enough to go through the process of
Right.
publishing a book through, through a major publisher and all of that. And then to have to be worried about what the CIA is going to do and having to go through.
One of my friends went to jail. One of my friends went to prison.
Wow.
Well, that's kind of a him problem because you knew you were supposed to submit.
Oh, okay.
Right, but
All right. You did. So now also on that same note, because we talked, you wrote this with Jessica Anya Blau, who I had mentioned to you in an email. We had her over the summer. We with Mary Jane that we love.
Yes, it's so good.
She was awesome.
Yeah.
So can you share with us, so at what point in this whole process does Jessica come in, and how do you write together when it's your personal experience? Like, I don't understand that. How does that work and turn out so well?
So that was after I submitted the first time. Then I could like give it to her, if that makes sense. Like we could go through it together. And so then what she did was, okay, so I had written before, but I had written more for newspapers and things like that. So my writing was very different than hers. And I read a lot of books, CIA books, right, from people who were in the CIA. And I was, no offense to them, I'm friends with some of them. They were very encyclopedic and clinical and war-ish in nature. And that's great because that does serve a specific audience. And I think that's fine. It just wasn't who I was as a person. And so I knew if I was going to write a book, I didn't want it to seem like that. I also knew that my writing is not narrative in nature, right? My writing, like I said, is very much factual, just get the facts out, that's it. And I was like, shoot, I don't know what I'm going to do because I need help. And so that's when I found Jessica. I'd read it, Drinking Closer to Home, one of her other books. And I was like, I love this girl. Like, she's just so fabulous. She's from California. She's Jewish. Like we just had a lot in common. And so basically what we would do, because her name's on this, it's not a ghost write. Like we wrote together, we would open up a Google document at the same time, a couple times a week and write together. Other times, I would just start writing like my stream of consciousness. It would be so funny because I would write something like, and the bomb went off. So the next day I was eating peanut butter and jelly. And like and Jessica would like come back and be like, what did it smell like? What did it taste like? And so, because for me, when you've lived your life, you don't find it all that interesting. And so having someone help me with that was actually really good, at least for me, especially for someone who doesn't give all the details a lot.
Right. Oh, that's so cool.
That is,
You must have had a good time working with her. I can imagine that's a fun.
Oh my gosh, we still talk.
Oh,
we're super close. We talk all the time. Oh no, she comes and visits. We're super close.
Oh, tell her hi.
Tell her Deb and Nay say hello.
I will.
I love this whole network we have going.
Yeah, she's the best. We're very, very close.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. That's really wonderful. I mean, I'm thinking about how much had to go into this story to tell your story. What made you decide to even talk about it? Like how to, because you do, like you don't look at Amazon reviews or anything like that. And we talked about the bullying, and you really, when you write, it's such a vulnerable thing to do. And if you're writing your story, that's even more vulnerable.
And when you said before that somebody wrote on Amazon that, you were lazy, I mean, does it like, it has to hit you because it's almost, it's a little bit bullyish. Like, how do you take that? How do you internalize that?
So the negative stuff actually doesn't bother me. It's so funny because I spend much more time actually helping Jessica because she will get upset and that's what she'll tell me. Because I think being bullied in a weird way helps me just have this like thick skin. Like I just genuinely don't care. I don't mean that in a flippant, careless way. I'm not for everyone. My book and the way it's written isn't for everyone. Just like every book is not for everyone. Every
Right.
person is not for everyone.
Right.
And so, you know, the mean spirited ones, you know, someone made a website and dedicated it to my big nose. I mean, you should see some of the things that people do. It just doesn't bother me. It just doesn't bother me because I guess what I always think about, and, you know, it's funny, in sort of reflecting back on those bullies, right? One of them ended up dying of a heroin overdose. You know, another one was in such an abusive relationship with her husband that he's now in jail. You know, I look back and I realize like people are coming from their own place of whatever. That I just can't.
No, you're right.
Look, I would be super wrong to say, you know, nothing ever bothers me, but things like that. And also that person who kind of mentioned I'm lazy, they're coming from a place of just ignorance, right? Like they don't even know. So I don't know, that part doesn't bother me as much. I decided to write the book because my husband always said I should write a book and I didn't really want to. But this was about 2016-ish, when the Me Too movement was starting to take off. And there was a lot of negativity surrounding the CIA and the FBI just in general. And I became almost like protective, like, hey. And so that's when I really started publishing a lot of articles too. And then my husband, of course, was like, you know, her daughter's one, she wants to hear your story. I'm like, really? You know, so now I have to. And so I did. That's what got me to do it.
That's great. Actually, when she reads, I mean, you said she's 6 years old now. So
yes, she doesn't care. She's
no.
more annoyed. Well, I mean, like I'm doing this right now and she's having a tantrum because she's mad that I'm not like paying attention to her.
I was going to say, what's harder, counterterrorism with the CIA or motherhood? You know?
Yep.
So you're held hostage by a six-year-old too. So I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Tell her we're very sorry.
No, she needs to really get over it.
Oh, there were certain things in the book that, I mean, as serious as the book is,
Yes.
there were things that I found very relatable, so I want to share it.
Good, that's so good.
The fact that you had to buy power bars because you had traveler's diarrhea, very relatable. I kept thinking, yep, I can see that. So when you go to these countries and you see, you know, the food, or there was one place you were living in where you heard the rats, and
yes, that was the farm.
So, and then when you had to shower and you had to put on your bait, like, how did you deal with that? Just as a regular, like, take the CIA out, but as a woman, like, how?
Yeah.
So, and I'm super glad to hear that you thought it was relatable, because that was important. I didn't think my life was relatable. And it was Jessica who was like, it actually is. Like, you just put it all out there, good and bad. And, you know, people will find these things. And so I think I've always been a very practical person. That's just something I've always taken. I think I get out from my dad. And so for me, so it wasn't because I had diarrhea, it was because I didn't want it. Right. And I knew that everyone, when they were going to this particular country, was coming back extremely, extremely sick. And I had been to a country prior to that, and I'm about 5'7", and I had become so sick that I weighed about 92 pounds when I came back. And I was so sick that I was, you know, holding up jeans with like a shoelace. I was very, very sick. And I realized, okay, I don't want that to happen again. So I would ship power bars over. Not because I think the food's gross, because I actually think the food is good. But the reality is like, it was a country I did not want to be sick in or have to go to a hospital in. And so I just started getting very practical, I guess, you know, about those things. But, you know, and showering in my bathing suit. I mean, yeah, I don't know what it was that made me do that. It was a country that I knew put listening devices in hotel rooms and things like that. And I think I just had reached a point where I felt, it was also a country that was really hostile and kind of mean to us. And so I just realized, okay, one way that I can solve this is by showering, in my bathing suit. I just didn't feel comfortable. I don't know why, but I didn't feel
Right.
comfortable.
Right. So your gut was telling you.
Mhm.
Definitely.
We get those feelings
Yeah, you
from time
do.
to
I
time.
know.
That's a creepy feeling when
Right.
you think,
Yeah.
especially when you travel and some things you're not in your comfort zone and something's a little off. And,
Mhm.
I never thought of showering in my swimsuit.
No.
But that's a great,
I
you
mean,
do
in
what you do.
case,
Yeah.
in case you have to, you can
Yeah,
do
in
it.
most, that was just the one country that I just didn't feel comfortable.
Yeah. And just for certain, again, as women in certain industries, obviously what you went through is definitely different, but there was, and of course now I'm going to forget where you were, but the gentleman who I don't know if I should call him a gentleman, but he called you Malibu Barbie.
Yeah.
Oh,
Like, I mean, how did you keep, you didn't, I mean, there was points where you didn't keep your cool, but because for your job and what you needed to do and get the information, you had to play along a lot.
Bite your tongue,
Bite your tongue. How hard was that?
so that one was an interesting one. It was funny because Jessica gets more mad about these things than I do. So sometimes it's like this game of like calming her down, or her telling me that I need to be more upset, right, about like these things. And so I think with the Malibu Barbie, looking back on it, I'm not even sure that it was meant in the sexist way. This was a country that actually was pretty open, but our CIA station there had a really bad relationship with the intelligence service of this country. They were mean to them. They withheld information all the time that they needed. And that station chief in particular was just not a nice human. And so I think they were like taking it out on us because we were willing to meet with them, whereas our station chief was not. But what I will say is the importance of having like male allies, because my male colleague was just like, I'm not going to deal with this. Either you talk to her or you don't learn anything at all. Like that's, and so I think that also taught me, we talk about feminism and women, but like we need male allies, like who support us. And so I think that was a really important lesson too.
Yes. And when when you went through some of these stressful situations, whether it was, something physically stressful or just emotionally stressful, was there something that you did, or do you have like a Zen place, a practice, something that you do to calm yourself, ground yourself? Like, how do you do that? And what is that for you?
So that was a hard thing, because a lot of people in the agency around that time would become alcoholics and things like that, right? To deal with it. I'm not the biggest drinker, it wasn't something that was like appealing to me. But the problem with the agency is that you are not allowed to seek the care of a psychologist. Otherwise, you are in jeopardy of losing your security clearance. And so I couldn't deal with a lot of the feelings that I had. And writing this book was actually super cathartic. Now, because of the book, I do take antidepressants. I've been diagnosed with PTSD. And now I see, a regular, sorry, that's TMI, like I said, don't care, see a psychologist regularly. And I realized like, wow, this was like, what I did was a lot. And I probably should have been able to work through it. I mean, I do like to exercise. So that is something that I do. And then another thing that I can't even believe that I'm admitting. So most of my day is really stressful. Like today I was on MSNBC talking about Ukraine, and, most of my day is full of like just a lot of news. And, and so at the end of the day, please don't judge me. I like to watch The Real Housewives of anything.
Oh, join us.
Come on.
It's almost just like brain, like I don't have to think, right? That's like, the last thing I even want to do is watch this like complex show. You know, people ask me if I've gotten into these shows, like not really, because that takes like brain power, and I just need to not use my brain.
Yeah.
And that is something I did do when I was at the agency. I'd watch like ridiculous shows, right? You know, just because when you're seeing that all day long, that's really the last thing you want to do, right? Is
Of course.
yeah.
I totally.
I'm binging Cheer right now.
I was gonna say.
And I love every
It's like
minute of
it's too
it.
much. I did watch it for a little bit, but I was like, this is too much.
And then there were parts where you're dancing to Madonna. Like,
I know.
we totally relate
We
to
do
that.
that.
Like, you know, so. What do you want to ask?
Oh, I was actually, one of the funny things when you said that you were immune to pepper spray, that part in the book, it just made me laugh. That whole scene that you wrote, I could see it play out in my mind. Do you know if you're still immune to peppers? Did you ever find out if that's held true more than once? I certainly hope not.
I don't know. I mean, I carry pepper spray because at the college I teach at, I do teach a class like very late at night. So I do carry pepper spray. I've never had to use it again since then. So
Good.
I don't know.
And now I know you do so much in the news and things like that, but this book, I've heard a rumor is has someone named Ellen Pompeo involved, and
it did, but now we're sort of moving into working with another group as well. And unfortunately, I can't really talk about it. I'm super sorry, guys.
Well, I just want to see this made into something I can watch. I was so enjoyed your story.
Yay.
And as a woman, I feel like it's inspiring. You know, I think a friend brought up Jack Reacher, and I started thinking about all these male, you know, action hero. I don't know what you want to call them,
Right.
but it's you know, as a woman, I would really like to see your story be out there for girls to see that this is something you can do and be super successful and smart at what you do in a good way. I mean, your book was, you know, enlightening to me. I love that you were very unapologetic about your interest in history, your how, you know, your academic skills, your ability to read maps and do all of those things. And that was you know, that's who you are and who you were at that time. And fearless. And especially at that time when I don't think it was as, you know, we talked about this, the time frame you grew up. You know, it's a little bit easier now, not completely, but a little bit for younger women. So I would like to see that. So I don't care who's doing it or who, if it's Ellen or ABC or whoever it is, I would like to see your story.
Thanks, guys.
It's accessible in a lot of different formats and ways for people.
Thank you.
So you know, after reading the book, you've done Crash and Bang, Poison School, The Farm, you did all of that. What's on your bucket list?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. I feel like I'm like so happy right now, you know, in my life. Like I'm not
Real Housewives of Dallas.
Oh, see, here's the thing. I like to watch them. I have absolutely no, like, you know what I mean? I don't know. I think that I'm obviously as a teacher now, and I teach national security and terrorism and all of that. I would love to influence, like, I would never want to be a politician, but I would love to influence like educational policy and national security policy, because I guess kind of to your point, we don't have enough women like doing that.
Right.
So maybe something like that would be on my bucket list. But other than that, I'm actually like, is that weird that I'm pretty satisfied?
No, not at all. It's refreshing.
Yes, it is refreshing.
That, and I'd like to go to Israel one day. I've never been. So I'd really like to go.
That's
I have
I
some,
haven't heard.
I've never been either, but
Mhm.
I have some friends and colleagues who've been, and they say it's just beautiful. So, yeah.
So, also, in the book, you do say, I don't know how people travel without a book to read, and that you always carry one. So what are you reading?
Well, so that was before I had children. Like, put that out right now. The one book that is on my nook that like when she's not bothering me on an airplane that I like read is I finished Where the Crowd Has. This is The Whisper Network by Chandler. I don't remember her name. Anyways, that's the book.
The Whisper Network.
Yes.
Okay.
And now, I wanted you to tell us just a little bit before we have some other quick questions for you. But before that, share with us about spycraft, your life after the CIA, FBI, and then also, I was just curious if any of your colleagues have reached out to you after reading your book and what or if you sent it to them to read and what they thought, if they knew who they were in the book, because you didn't really use their names.
So with the CIA, yes, plenty of they were all bridesmaids in my wedding. So I'm still like best friend. I mean, while I'm talking to you, they're texting me. So I mean, I'm still like very good friends. And then so my boss at CIA knew exactly who he was. Like in my book, it was very clear. But I'm nothing but kind and nice, to him. And so he reached out, just a kind, email. I haven't really kept in a lot of touch with him, but it was very nice. Just like, I'm so proud of you, and then the deputy boss, who definitely knew who he was in the book too, also sent me a very kind email. Obviously the FBI is a little bit different of a stitch, but what's been interesting about that is there is like a 21 woman gender discrimination lawsuit against them, right now by a group of women. And some retired agents have reached out to me, just, apologizing. When I'm like, you don't have to apologize. But then also, the agent in charge of the San Francisco office and the New York office have also reached out and been like, what can we do differently? So that's been actually awesome. So that part's been good. No, former colleagues have not necessarily reached out because why would they? I didn't exactly keep in contact with them, and I'm not exactly kind to them, in the book, and I'm fairly certain know who they are. So, and it's part of why I teach. I always say the CIA taught me what I want to teach. The FBI taught me who I want to teach. And so, I kind of realized that I love this counterterrorism stuff, but only 17% of women only 17% of special agents at the FBI are women. And we probably need to change that. And so
a low number.
I kind of do that from the ground up now, right? Educating girls. And I love it so much. So that's what I do now.
That's great. That's great. And spycraft, is that, tell us a little bit about, you're still, is that a program you teach? Explain to us.
Oh, so I don't teach that exact class anymore. I don't think you had an updated bio. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
So I do teach national security and foreign policy now at different high schools.
Oh, okay.
And I make a curriculum that goes out to girls' schools across the US. And then I also I'm an adjunct faculty at a university here. And I teach domestic terrorism and criminal justice as well. So it's kind of cool. I get to do the CIA stuff and FBI stuff. It's been awesome.
Oh, that's great.
Wow. So we would like to see if anyone in all our guests, if they would like to write questions in the chat. We're going to do, are we doing our?
Yeah, we could do our lightning round.
So Tracy, we always do a lightning round at the end of the program where we ask you some quick, fun questions, and you have to do it in under a minute. So the pressure's on, but pressure. So this is not a big deal for you.
Okay.
There's no swinging light bulb and like an interrogation room.
Do you want to do the timer?
Sure,
Okay.
I'll do the timer. Deb will ask the questions and you just, whatever comes to mind.
Okay. So
Ready?
go. Netflix, Hulu, or Amazon Prime?
Amazon Prime.
What are you currently binging? I guess we know that.
Real Housewives.
If you have an hour completely to yourself, what are you usually doing?
Exercising, probably.
Okay. What was your favorite pandemic snack or cocktail?
Snack? I don't know.
You want to take a pass?
Yes. Sounds stressful.
Books or movies that give you a good laugh or a good cry?
Movies that give me a good laugh,
Laugh.
for sure.
Can you name one that you like?
I mean, American Pie is like
Oh,
fantastic. Yeah, I'm like raunchy. Like that's funny.
Who will play you, or who do you want to play you in a movie version of your book?
See, that's a bad question because I'm old and I don't really watch movies. So I don't really watch movies. So in my mind, it's just like Reese Witherspoon, right? And she's like
Yes.
46 and like she can't play a 20-year-old. So I really don't know.
But Tracy, you're not old, Tracy.
Right. But when I was at the agency, I was 21. So
right.
I don't know any actresses that are 20,
In their
right?
20s,
Like,
right.
right.
I get it. We can give you a, you know what you need to watch? Can I say
Oh,
this?
yes.
Because since you like raunchy, although it's not raunchy, but
It's great.
the sex lives of college girls on Hulu. Where is it? Is it on Hulu or Netflix?
It's not Netflix.
Oh,
It might be HBO Max.
it's with Mindy Kaling from The Office.
I
She
love her.
created this show. You would enjoy it because
Okay.
It's very female oriented and
empowering,
strong.
yeah.
Yes, and we have been
Okay.
watching it here, and I believe it's on. I feel like it's on HBO Max for
Okay.
some reason.
Okay.
But I don't know. The Secret Life of College Girls.
Is that what it's called?
No, the Sex
Sex
Life
Life.
of College
We're
Girls.
giving it
It's
the
a
wrong
Secret Life too.
Right.
But they're hilarious and fun, and they are a bunch of young actresses.
Yes,
so maybe you
maybe
can cast
you can-
someone. There you
yes.
go.
Okay.
Because Leighton is blonde.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, there you go.
She would be perfect.
She would be perfect. So you have to watch it.
Yes.
And if you cast her, give us a little shout out.
Absolutely.
So I don't know if anyone has any additional questions. We do have a minute or two left that we can do that.
Did you want to?
Yes. Let's see. Judy says I can relate a bit because I used to work for the USFDA.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you, Judy. And Judy also wanted to say hi to Judy Cohen.
Okay.
Oh, I think she meant that as a private message, but that's funny. I'm glad we have people who are friends that come on.
Yay.
I thought that was too.
It's lovely. But we really enjoyed your book. I had picked it
Thank
up
you for
a
having
while ago and just really enjoyed reading your experience. It's unique and empowering, and I think it was it's just fantastic. I'm so glad that you were able to meet with us even after
Yes.
a little fender banger.
Vendor,
No,
yeah.
I just appreciate you guys having me on. Thank you so much.
And I have to say, I mean, like you said before, it is relatable.
Oh,
Like,
so
it's-
much.
There were so many things in there, whereas like, oh, I can. And there were times where I was like, well, if I was questioning him, this is what I would have never, this is not anything I would have been able to do.
It's true. It's like, I think we all feel we face some certain challenges in either our day-to-day lives with work, and it's certainly not to the physical and emotional challenges that you had. But, I loved to see how you overcame those with such dignity and class and
And you
patriotism.
said you're
and
happy, and
Yes.
that's the most important
Yeah.
thing. So
So thank you so much for being with us, Tracy. This was really
Thanks,
lovely.
guys. Thank you for having me.
Good luck
Bye.
and be well.
say
Thank
hi to
you.
your daughter.
Yes.
Bye. Thank you.
Take
You're
care.
welcome. Have a good night. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. We hope you enjoyed our program. Please log on to pagingoceanside.com to see our next book discussion and our next author visit.
Yes.
So everyone have a good night. Thank you.
Good night, everybody.